Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 6 of The Boys Presents Diabolical. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. We get a somewhat Nubian Prince-centric episode, which, if I'm not mistaken, this character was referenced in Season 1. He's the one that Madeline was trying to sell to the mayor of Baltimore, right? He's the guy that Homelander ended up shooting out the plane in the first season. Was it episode 1 or 2? But that guy, Nubian Prince, was kind of being given to him. Like I said, I think it was the mayor of Baltimore, but do correct me in the comments down below. But he hasn't popped up in the show, so this is kind of neat getting to see him. Obviously, he's like, I guess the equivalency would be Black Panther, which there's layers to that, because it's funny because he's putting on the fake accent. The character is voiced by Don Cheadle, who was in the Marvel movies with Chadwick Boseman, who played T'Challa, which this character's kind of a parody of to some extent, so it's just interesting. And he's putting on the fake accent too, so it's just like there's layers to that I really liked. I like the whole action sequence at the beginning, Nubian Prince and Nubia working together to take down Groundhog. That he was a superhero that went villain and stuff like that. So, but obviously 8 years later, they can't stand each other. Another complicated relationship of things just, all relationships are trouble, but I'm sure even more so in a superhero realm where it's she used her thunder and it zapped his nuts, which he calls Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. So that's interesting. And you had their daughter wanting them to kind of stay together, and her dad being like, no, everything's okay, we're fine, we're still, we might fight, but we still love each other, and everything's gonna be fine. And then Nubia being like, oh, don't worry, honey, we're gonna get divorced, and Gerald is gonna get you a pony. Who, really quickly, Nubia being voiced by Alicia Tyler, which I like the whole thing of right, obviously they did it with Justin Roiland, they did it with Awkwafina last episode, and now Aisha Tyler in this one. Also, Elliot Glazer, because him and his sister wrote his episode too. So these people voicing the characters also writing the episodes too, which is pretty dope. But yeah, obviously Alicia Tyler starring in this and writing the episode too, so that's pretty dope. But that's kind of sad to see this superhero marriage kind of fall apart like that. And so she takes it upon herself. You know what? I'm going to keep my parents together, because the only thing that keeps them together is fighting. And I guess it should have been a key sign that Groundhog was in her phone. It's why would you have contact with someone who is I was did he redeem himself or something like that? It's oh no. Turns out the whole thing was orchestrated, and it turns out the daughter knows, because she's oh yeah, I found my mom's script. I was oh man, it's why am I surprised? I mean let's not forget, just within the Boys itself, Homelander created supervillains for them to fight. So I guess it shouldn't be too surprised with all that, with the corporatization of the superheroes. That's what The Boys is all about. Everything being fabricated and just putting on a show and just manipulating the public like that. So that's interesting. But I love that she was forcing his hand, which Groundhog is voiced. But the moment he started talking, I was is that my boy John DiMaggio? Super was. Poor guy, he just wants to be left alone. It seems like he's kind of on rough times. Having hammers for hands. He's try to, carefully go to the bathroom without fatally hurting myself trying to use the bathroom. And she's kind of forcing his hand by being oh, you either help me or I'm going to tell people you're a pedo. And he's just I knew that this would kind of end up looking like this. Because he talks a little bit about his own family situation, that he's right, my family were raising a kid who, because he's I got anger issues and I have hammers for him, busting holes in the trailer. He's yeah, it was kind of for everyone's best interest, but it's right, this little girl came to you, she wants help. So yeah, he plays the role of a supervillain, and Nubian Prince and Nubia end up beating his ass. And at first you're just kind of I was worried. I was hopefully don't take it too far. But then they stopped, and then the daughter and Groundhog kind of looked to each other yeah, everything worked out. I was oh great. And they proceed to keep beating the shit out of him, and she's no, stop, I told him he's only doing this because I told him I'd call him a pedo. And the Nubian Prince stops and is wait, he's a pedo? As in pedophile? As in that guy from Seventh Heaven? I was oh, the reference. I was ooh, that. I also love that the next line was, yeah, that one fucked me up. I was I think that fucked a lot of people up. I was oh man, I kind of let that slip my mind. It's yeah, I don't know if, I think when stuff like that comes out, you don't really it doesn't get brought up. It's kind of like it was dealt with and that's it. But I let that slip my mind. I was like, oh man, I hadn't thought about that in years. The fact that when that news came out, I was like, specifically, if anyone doesn't like, specifically referencing the actor who played the dad in Seventh Heaven. So that was interesting. And poor Groundhog, they were beating every living shit out of him to the point his blood is spraying on her. It's like, right. I even love the, playing into the whole, like, oh, like, you're showing up here. You're not even in our season. I was like, oh my God, because it's like, once again, the storylines and stuff like that. But it sucks. And as they're beating the crap out of him, they're getting turned on. And it's like, I think that says a lot that, the fuck fighting whole thing, and once again, very much, it's not as twisted as the Stormfront and Homelander thing, because there was major effed up layers to that, but still, it's just kind of jacked up. You're doing your thing, you're beating the crap out of a guy, you're spraying his blood on your daughter. We never got to see Groundhog for the rest of the episode. I'm assuming he just got the shit beat out of him. He's like, you know what, fuck that, I'm just going back home, and I'll just screw all this. I doubt they killed him, but still, poor guy, poor guy. And so, and she also had to listen as her parents banged it out super hard the entire time. And he's screaming out, Taco Tuesday. And you're just like, that's enough to traumatize you all across the board. So it's just like, yeah. And then immediately what happens the next day is like her parents are back to fighting, and it's just like, cool, here's the divorce papers, split up. She's like, I am going to get that damn pony though, because she's like, it's for everyone's best interest, so I'm going to milk this situation for what I can get. So it's like, yeah, you guys need to be split up. It is best for everyone, but I'm going to milk this situation to make the most out of it. You want to buy me a pony to make me feel better about the trauma that's associated with you guys divorcing? Go right ahead. So it, I guess, ends more positively, I guess, than you think it would. I mean, it's a shitty situation all around, but it's still a thing of, yeah, I think it's best they got divorced. I don't think that's a healthy relationship. And it was a sweet story of like, oh, let's get, this ain't a Take-Two situation, which I don't know how Take-Two ends, but it Take-Two specifically, but I'm sure it has a more happier ending than this when it comes to the whole conversation of divorce. I think it's that thing of, oh, you hope everything's going to come back around. I mean, it's not just like It Takes Two, but that's like the most recent example I can think of storyline-wise that tackles like, oh, parents getting divorced and go through a whole situation that come back. But it's like, no, it's kind of like, oh yeah, they hooked up and everything, but it's kind of like, probably best that they didn't. It's probably best that for everyone's sake that they split up, because there's such a typhoon of fighting and anger and just volatileness thrown at each other. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the only person, I feel bad for the daughter, but I guess she's kind of winning in it. I think the only loser in all of this is Groundhog, so poor guy. But yeah, really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.